The velvet curtains of the Starbucks window reflected a girl who looked like she belonged in a different world. At 16, Stacey had mastered the art of the rich kid aesthetic. She wore a shimmering silk dress borrowed from an older cousin and designer heels that pinched her toes, but she didn't care. On the mahogany table sat a venti caramel macchiato, its whipped cream peaked with golden drizzle. She took a photo, carefully framing the green logo and the expensive-looking watch she'd also borrowed. The caption read, "Mid-afternoon treats. Life is sweet." Inside, however, the sweetness was a lie. Her heart hammered against her ribs like a trapped bird. Every time she took a sip of that $5 coffee, she tasted the metallic tang of guilt. Only 3 hours earlier, she had stood in her father's cramped bedroom, her hands trembling as she reached into his worn leather wallet. She had watched him leave for a plumbing job in his stained overalls, his back hunched from years of tightening pipes in damp basements. She had found the $50 bill, the only one there, and snatched it. It was supposed to be for her mother's heart medication and their dinner. But Stacey's friends were going to the mall, and she couldn't bear the thought of being the poor girl again. The cold homecoming. When Stacey returned home that evening, the air in the small house was heavy and smelled of medicinal rubbing alcohol. Her father, Elias, was sitting at the wooden kitchen table, his head in his calloused hands. "Stacey," he said softly, not looking up, "did you see the money in my wallet? I left it there before I went to work. I was going to buy your mother's pills on the way home, but when I checked, it was gone." Stacey felt a cold sweat break across her neck. She looked at the shopping bag she had hidden behind the door, containing a new lipstick she'd bought with the change. "No, Pa. Maybe you dropped it at the job site? You're always so forgetful." Elias looked at her then. His eyes weren't angry. They were hollow, etched with a profound, soul-crushing exhaustion. He knew she was lying. He had seen the coffee cup sleeve peeking out of her bag. But he simply nodded. "I see," he whispered. "Then tonight we will have to make do." Stacey went to her room, trying to drown out the silence with music, but the hunger began to gnaw at her. Despite the sugary coffee, her stomach felt empty and acidic. An hour later, her father called her to the kitchen. "Dinner is ready, Stacey. Come help your mother." Stacey walked into the dim kitchen. There were no plates, no smell of fried fish or rice. Instead, there were 3 mismatched glass mugs on the table. In the center of the stove, a small pot of water was whistling. Elias carefully poured the boiling water into the 3 mugs. He carried one to the bedroom where Stacey's mother lay pale and frail. Stacey followed him, watching from the doorway. "I'm sorry, Maria," Elias said, his voice cracking as he helped his wife sit up. He handed her the glass of plain, hot water. "This is all we have for dinner tonight. Just a warm glass of water. I have nothing left to feed us. I failed to bring home the bread today. But drink this. It will warm your stomach so you can sleep." He turned to Stacey and handed her the second glass. His hand was shaking so violently that the water sloshed over the rim. A single heavy tear escaped his eye and traced a path through the gray dust on his cheek. "Here, my child," he said, his voice a ghost of a whisper. "Drink your dinner." Stacey looked down at the steam rising from the clear liquid. It was nothing. It was literal emptiness. The image of her Starbucks cup flashed in her mind. The rich brown espresso, the decadent cream, the sugar that cost as much as her mother's health. She realized that while she was posting "life is sweet" to a crowd of people who didn't actually care about her, her father was weeping over a pot of boiling water. The weight of the stolen $50 felt like lead in her stomach. Every sip of that coffee had been a theft of her mother's breath and her father's dignity. She couldn't take a single sip of the water. The heat of the glass burned her palms, but it was nothing compared to the burn of shame in her chest. She fell to her knees at the foot of her parents' bed, the glass clattering onto the floor as she finally broke. her cries echoing through the house that she had helped empty. For the first time in her life, Stacey didn't care about the dress, the shoes, or the friends. She only cared about the man whose hands were scarred from work, who was currently zipping a glass of hot water just so she could feel like a queen for an hour.
If you want more life stories like this, don't forget to like and subscribe.